Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of African Techpreneur. We're actually on episode 10, which is phenomenal. It's going very well. I mean, and like I mentioned last week, we're getting such awesome feedback from those that attend live as well as those who watch it after the fact. And what's really great is that we're putting out these little snippets, and people are finding the snippets extremely valuable. Now, today I want to talk about lifelong learning as a career strategy. We all want to be successful in our careers, right? We all want to not be stagnant, to keep growing, to earn a little more, to get that coveted promotion that we want. The secret to success there is lifelong learning, is to just keep learning. And you know, the great part about learning, is that no knowledge is ever wasted. You can't say that I learned something and it wasn't really useful, because you never know when some knowledge that you learned is going to actually become useful. That's the nature of knowledge. It might not be useful now, might not be useful to you today, but at some stage in the future, it will become useful to you. And the beauty of knowledge is that, you know, I don't know if anybody has measured the true capacity of the human mind, because it's really amazing. It's mind-boggling how much the mind can store. There've been studies done on when can a person say that, my hard disk up there has now reached full capacity. I got a 10 terabyte and that's it. No more space. I need to shed some stuff. We haven't found that yet. And you can just keep learning and learning and learning. But when it comes to a career, it's exactly what we were speaking about earlier, right? Brackets versus Visual Studio for IT varsity students that are now making that shift to Visual Studio. The nature of the times we're living in is that we have to keep changing, and with the change comes new learning. Now, there's two types of people. Remember that. The one type are those who have to learn in response to a change that takes place. So they basically wait for the change to take place, and then they learn just to remain relevant. So the company sends them on some training course, and reluctantly they drag themselves across to the training course, and then they do their learning, and they come back and they apply. But then you get the leaders. Those are the people who are proactive. They already have a feel of what's going on in industry. They are constantly reading. They are constantly looking and watching over the horizon, that in my profession, in the space that I'm working in, what is the new trend that's coming up? What's going to be the new big thing that's coming up? And they prepare for it well in advance. So when the time comes, then they become the go-to guys. Everybody looks up to them and says, well, hey, you seem to know more about this than the rest of us. Why don't you show it around to us? Now, I've shared my personal example of this kind of attitude previously. When I was working as a software engineer out in Johannesburg, I saw this mobile revolution coming. I saw the rise of mobile phones, and this was just before the iPhone was released. I mean, the iPhone changed everything, right? The iPhone just transformed our world in a very big way, and it launched that whole app revolution. But around 2009, 2010, I already predicted this was going to happen. So I started to teach myself all the technologies that would be required for mobile. And I tried to approach my employers. I tried to approach the company that I was working for. And I said to them, guys, we need to ride this mobile wave. Before it happens, we need to prep for it. And when it happens, we need to be ready for it. But I guess they had a different strategy. They were kind of comfortable with what they were doing, even though they are a technology business. I guess their strategy was different, and they didn't go there. So subsequently, I taught myself mobile development. And by 2012, I won the Vodacom App Star Award for best app in the country. And like I mentioned a few episodes ago, that's what launched my Xandr business. First, it was arithmetic. And then when we took over Xandr from the previous owners, we merged the two. So arithmetic and Xandr became one. And now Xandr is doing phenomenally well. Now, that is the power of learning, of reading, of keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the world around us. Now, by the way, before I proceed, for those of you that are present, those that are watching the live stream, don't wait till the end to ask your questions. Ask your questions right away. If something pops up in your head, if I say something that you'd like to ask some questions about, go for it. Don't wait right until the end. So coming back to lifelong learning. Now, so the first thing about lifelong learning is that it helps us to prepare for the changes that are coming up. And I always encounter two groups of people, no matter where I go. Wherever I do public speaking, wherever I go into meetings, you always see there are two distinct groups. One is the larger group. The larger group are those people who are the reactors. They don't worry too much about what's coming up. For them, they rely on past knowledge and on their opinions. So they come in and they state their opinions as fact. Then you got the smaller group. Those people are the learned ones. Those are the ones that are constantly reading and updating themselves and thinking about what's going to happen in the future. And it's easy to pick those ones out also. It's easy to make out who those guys are. So that's the thing we need to be very aware of, especially for those of you who are IT varsity students, you are in the field of technology. Like it or not, you've just subscribed into the most volatile industry in the world, the IT industry. And by volatile, I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it in a positive way. Because your industry, the IT industry, is constantly changing all the time. I mean, .NET 3.8 was out last year. This year, or late last year, they released .NET 5. And now the announcement is already out that in November this year, .NET 6 is coming out. So Microsoft, hold on, whoa, we're just getting used to .NET 5 and you are already talking about .NET 6. That is crazy progression of technology. But it's not just with .NET, right? I mean, think about your mobile phones. If you bought an iPhone 10 about a year ago, then you were replaced by the iPhone 11, and then this year the iPhone 12, and they've already announced the iPhone 13. I think on the April 20th Apple event, they're going to be announcing the iPhone 13. So technology is just moving and moving. So you are in an industry right now. Those of you that are in IT, you are in an industry that's constantly changing. And to dominate in your field, you need to be ahead of the pack. You need to be ahead of the curve. You need to be informed about what's going on in the world of technology. And the only way to do this is to just have this love for learning. Just keep learning. Now, which brings me to the next point. So the first point is, for career success, we need to keep learning. The second point is, how do you learn? Where do you learn? The answer is very simple. We have the biggest repository of knowledge ever known to human beings right there in the palm of our hands. Unlock your phone, go to Google, search on any topic in the world. Past, present, future, it's all here. You can learn about things, people's predictions about the future. You can learn about what happened in the past, what's going on in the future. You can look at current news. You can do tutorials. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. And for me, as a person who's coming from an age where there wasn't the internet and there wasn't mobile devices, this is something I can never get used to. You know, I mean, sitting in a taxi, sitting in a bus, sitting on your bed, in transit, on a plane, just pull out your device and start learning something. And, you know, that's very beautiful. And I think the trouble is the younger generation, those that were born into this technology, that were born into mobile, they don't really appreciate it as much as we do. You know, it's like when you don't have something and you're suddenly given it, you appreciate more than if you've always had it. That's just the way life is. When I started coding in those years, it was just the library. I used to go to the library, borrow books on coding, and learn to code from there. Now, how boring is that? Think about it. You've just got like 3 or 4 books on coding, and this was in the mid 1980s when coding itself wasn't such a big thing. I was lucky that in the town where I lived in Kwaduguza, which was Stanger, now it's Kwaduguza, there was a library, and in that library there were actually books on coding that I could go and learn from. I was maybe very fortunate at that time. And I used to go and I used to learn to code, and I used to write coding tutorials, and I wanted to show you guys this little book. This book, I don't know if you can see it clearly. This book is 36 years old. It's my first coding tutorials. You can see there's a very dire warning there. This was a 10-year-old me writing that. Please don't touch or you'll die. So yeah, I was very hyperactive. I used to code on my Commodore 128 machine, and when you look inside, there's the code. This is a language known as BASIC, Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. This is like one of the first languages that people used to code in the old days with our little 8-bit machines. There's a double page of my little scribbles. I don't know what I was aiming for. I'm not really sure. Was I hoping to get this book published? I don't know. But this was just 10-year-old me writing tutorials. Maybe for myself, maybe for someone else. I don't know. So this is I coded some games here. There's a game called Shootout. There's a game called Missile. There's a game called Secret Code, Cracking the Secret Code. So I used to write these programs. I used to, literally write them down with pen and paper. And I used to also code them on my computer. And my coding skills got more and more, more and more advanced. Until when I was in grade 12 in Matric, I was studying computer science, and I studied a language called Pascal. So after BASIC, the most popular language was Pascal. There again, there wasn't internet, there wasn't forums, there wasn't a place where you can go and do a Google search, there wasn't W3 schools and Stack Overflow or IT Varsity's Slack account. Hey guys, I'm struggling with my code, please help me. Guys, we had to figure all that out for ourselves. All we had was library books and thick manuals, and we had to figure things out for ourselves. And if we needed any new software or plugins, we needed to buy them from software shops that used to send you'd send money to them. There wasn't even internet banking. You would put the money in an envelope and put that envelope in a post office, and that money would take about a week to reach them with your order. And then you would get in the mail, you'd get a disc. Now, if you guys don't know what a disc is, you know the save icon on your programs is that little square. That's what discs used to look like in the past. They were this big, floppy disks. They were like kind of bendy. So you would wait for those to come, and then you would install it. So I started coding in a program called Pascal, Turbo Pascal it was, and I produced this. This is the manual for my submission of my major project in Matric. It was It's a program I wrote called Macdoodle Turbo. It was a program to draw pictures, you know, Microsoft Paint. For those of you that use Microsoft Paint, I don't know if anybody still uses Paint. So it was very, very similar to Microsoft Paint. And I had my little contents page there. I don't know why this was cut off. Maybe there was a mistake. Starting up, instructions, system requirements. So, you know what's the sad part? The sad part is the code for this doesn't exist anymore. I don't know where it is. The manual exists, but the actual program is unfortunately lost to the ages, because that computer is, I don't know, it's disappeared somewhere. So I kind of lost out there, but it was a really good program. I did very well, and even by today's standards, it was really cool. So guys, we learned all of these things back in the days. We had fun doing these things. No one forced us. We were not getting paid for these things. We were not getting any reward other than just doing the work, just the coding. And you know, the fun part was we had these little personal challenges that we used to do. We had friends that were in the coding space, and we used to challenge each other. So today things are gone so different, right? You guys have the internet, you have forums, you have all the support, you have the world at your fingertips. So it's not hard to be a lifelong learner. It's actually easier than ever before. In fact, right now, if you are not a lifelong learner, I don't know whether you should own a device also. And I'll give you an example, right? This is my iPad. I do all my learning on my iPad. Now, I read my books. Oh, that's a picture of my 4x4, by the way. I read my books on Amazon Kindle app. There's the Kindle app. Now, I'm currently reading this book here called Finnish Lessons. It's about the education system in Finland. I have Audible, not Audacity. I have Audible, which is the program that you use. It's also an Amazon product. It's where you get audiobooks. You can listen to audiobooks. So while I'm exercising, even while I'm driving, I just put in an audiobook and I put on my headphones and I listen to those. And it's brilliant. I mean, you can get pretty much any book that you could buy from a bookstore. You get the audio version of it. And what's great in many cases is that the author himself or herself will be reading the book, which is phenomenal. Then I have an account with Pluralsight, which is a coding website, very advanced stuff. It's because I'm constantly learning about coding. In fact, at 4 this morning, I was reading an article about coding. Then I have an account with Skillshare, where I learn creative courses. One of the things I like doing in my spare time is just doodling, just drawing things. So I just draw stuff, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy, curling up on a couch somewhere, or going to a coffee shop, or going to a park somewhere, and learning. And there's so much out there. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed because there's really so much. I have like at least 4 books right now that I've bought that I need to start reading, but I need to finish the current one and then move to the next and the next and the next. So guys, one is, for career success, you need to be a lifelong learner. And second, to be a lifelong learner, today, it's easier than ever before. Forget about going to face-to-face classes. I mean, who's got time for that, right? I was in a conversation with an NGO on Monday, and I was sitting across this lady, and she's got fantastic ideas about empowering small businesses or micro enterprises. These people selling goods on the street side and things. So she wants to put them through some courses on financial management, etc. So I said to her, you're going to bring those people in to your center to learn these courses, and you're going to teach them. Who's going to be looking after their businesses while they come in for training? So she thought about it, and she'd had no answer to that question. She asked me, what's the option? So I says, well, mobile learning. Get them get your content onto a cell phone, make videos out of it, and let them learn from where they are. If they're sitting at their shops, at their stalls, and there's a quiet period, they can pick up their phones, go to YouTube, start learning. And all it'll cost them is the price of data, which is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, right? So it made sense to her. Now, in today's day and age, we are all living busy lives. We're working 8 to 5. We are working very, very tight schedules, tight deadlines. We don't have time to go for physical classes. But with e-learning, it's come to us. The learning has come to you, no matter where you are. You can be anywhere in the world, and as long as you have an internet connection and you have a device, you can start learning. Even if it's a 700 Rand smartphone, you can learn on it. So guys, there really isn't an excuse for becoming a lifelong learner. And I'm giving you my personal example because I love learning. My whole life is between learning and teaching. And the fact that I learned so much, I can tell you with confidence that no knowledge goes to waste. And I'll give you one example. When I started teaching at a school in Escort, this was in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, this must have been about nearly 20 years ago. I noticed that the teachers were manually calculating the marks, the student marks. So the students would submit their test scripts, during the exams, and the teachers would manually convert those from the raw mark into a percent. And there were lots of mistakes. And not only that, but they would manually write those marks into the mark sheet, and then they would manually transfer the marks from the mark sheets. Now the mark sheet is a grid with all the students' names and all the subjects at the top and all the students' marks in the middle. And then they would manually extract that information and write it into the reports. And I says, well, there has to be a better way. There really, really has to be a better way. It was about 15 years ago. And so I decided to teach myself Excel. At that stage, I had no need for Excel. I had no need to learn Excel. But I learned Excel, and I built a system where the teachers had to simply type in the raw mark of the student. So pick up the script, the exam question paper or the answer paper, and put in the student mark. And this system would convert that to percent, and it would take that percent and automatically place it into the mark sheet, and automatically take it from the mark sheet and place it into the reports. So I saved the teachers days, literally days of work just by creating this system on Excel. Now, again, that wasn't anything very relevant to me at that stage. I was teaching maths and physics. But then fast forward 5 or 6 years from there, one of my first lecturing engagements at the Durban University of Technology was actually the first lecturing engagement I had. What was my foot in the door wasn't computer science, it wasn't coding, it was Excel. I excelled at Excel, so they asked me to teach Excel, and I taught what I knew, and they loved it. And then I was making really good money teaching Excel, something that I'd learned 5 or 6 years previously that at that time had no relevance to me. Let me give you another example, right? Steve Jobs, when he was still at university, he attended a course on different types of fonts. I mean, what an obscure course, right? Why would somebody even have a course on different types of fonts? But he says, look, I found it intriguing. I went, I did the course. And at that time, that knowledge was completely useless to me. But fast forward 5 or 6 years when they were building the visual interface for the Mac computer, and they were deciding on which font was best for the Mac computers. That's when that knowledge came back to me. And using my knowledge that I gained in that one tiny obscure course that I did, I applied that into the Mac computers. And that was partially the reason for the success of Mac computers, which is phenomenal. So guys, remember, for career success, you need to be a lifelong learner. And to be a lifelong learner, all you need is your device and an internet connection, and obviously the desire to learn. And the world is your oyster after that. The world is your playground. Now, for those of you who are learning online, especially IT Varsity students, I have a bit of advice for you on how to make the most of online learning. Because I hear this very frequently from people that, I prefer to sit in a classroom. I can't learn online. And my response to that is, are you serious? Do you prefer to sit in a stuffy classroom and just listen to somebody talking without the option to scrub backwards? I mean, how nice if in a classroom you're listening to the teacher and then your mind drifts. I wonder what's for lunch today. And then you come back, you're lost. How nice if you could scrub the teacher backwards, if you could rewind the teacher. You can't do that in a physical classroom. But in the online space, you can scrub backwards as many times as you want. You can watch that video a dozen times if you want, 100 times if you want. So I don't buy this thing about being in a physical classroom. I think with the right mindset and with the right advice, you can be far more effective with online learning than with face-to-face learning. So what are the tips for online learning, especially for IT Varsity students? Number one, treat the online course as a real course, as a face-to-face course. Now, why I use the word real is people tend to not see online as being real. So going to a classroom feels more real, but learning online doesn't feel real to others. Now, you need to shift your mindset. You need to come into that mindset where you treat online as real learning, as an actual course. Take it with that level of seriousness, number one. Number two, hold yourself accountable. That I am going to complete this course by a certain date. Please, you need to put a time frame to when you're going to learn. You need to give yourself deadlines. But for IT Varsity students, no problem for you. Your support team are creating those deadlines for you, right? And they constantly following up with you about that. So hold yourself accountable. If you cannot hold yourself accountable, why not get someone who will help you? Get a partner, somebody who will assist you, that you will be accountable to them. So it could be a partner, a spouse, a friend, and say to them, guys, look, I'm doing this module with IT Varsity, and I hope to complete it by end of next month. And I want you to hold me accountable. This is what I plan to do. This is my learning plan for the month. And if I don't study for the day, I need you to hold me accountable to that. So you need a level of accountability. For IT Varsity students, it's even easier for you, right? All you need to do is go on the Slack and pair up with somebody. Find somebody, put an announcement. I'm looking for an accountability partner. I'm looking for a study partner. And then you guys work together. Whether you are physically located, close together, or you are across the world, that's fine. Just go on Slack and become accountability partners to each other. And something else will come out of that. You'll see there's some friendly competition developing there, which is excellent. Number 3, time management. Listen to me. Do not ever think you're going to study at any time in the day and you're going to succeed. It's not going to happen. You need to have a fixed time every day. If you're a morning person, set yourself a learning time as early as possible. If you are a night owl, I see people submitting assignments at 1 in the morning. Seriously, what are you doing up at 1 in the morning. And then I realized that there are lots of people who prefer to work in the quiet of the night, in the middle of the night. So have a time every day to study. And it's been actually psychologically proven where our mind becomes trained, and every day at that time it automatically switches into that mode. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes a few weeks. By 3 or 4 weeks, your mind is now trained. And when you sit there at your space at that time, you find that your mind is suddenly open to that. This works not just for studying, but even for creative work. I mean, authors will tell you the same thing. People like Stephen King will say, every day at a certain time, I sit at my desk and I write. If I try to write at any other time of the day, it just doesn't work. But if I try at my special time, then I find that the words just flow. So time management. Number 4, somebody already is a step ahead of me in the comments. Get a workspace, somewhere that is your place to learn. So one is to have your fixed time and the other is to have your fixed place. It could be a little desk in your room. It could be, your dining room. It could be, out at a library or at a coffee shop, you name it. But you need a familiar environment. And what happens is, just as with time, every time you sit at that place, your mind goes into that mode automatically. So have your space. But with that space comes point number 5. Eliminate all distractions. Physical distractions, people around you. I mean, you cannot study if there's little kids running everywhere and there's TV that's on in front of you, or there's loud music playing, unless you're the type of person that enjoys loud music while you're studying. So you need to eliminate all kinds of distractions, including digital distractions. Remember that. Put your WhatsApp off, or put your phone off. Unless you're studying from your phone, put it off and focus on your studies. Number 6, figure out how you learn best. What works for me is not necessarily what works for you. Now, I'll tell you what works for me when I'm studying. I like to sit in a place where there's a view, a beautiful view. It needs to be very quiet. It needs to be comfortable. There needs to be a lot of natural light and a view. Even if it's not a glorious, glamorous view of a mountain or something, even if it's a view of a pretty garden or a little floral arrangement, as long as there's something for me to focus on when I turn my head from my screen. Now that's what works for me. With others, I've noticed they prefer to have their headphones on and be listening to some kind of music, either classical soothing music or a little more fast-paced music, whatever works for you. Some people prefer to work with a cup of coffee on the side, with a little snack there. For me, that really doesn't make any difference. I can learn with or without it. So figure out what works for you and do that. If you like having some snacks around, if you like having a cup of coffee around, then it works for you. Go for it. That's the best thing you can do. Somebody said a beach view. A beach view is excellent. And we are fortunate in Durban that you can go to a coffee shop that's near the beach. There's this one that I like. It's called On Point. There's a place that I go to where you can see the beach, you can see the harbor, you can see the ships coming in and out. I love that. White noise. Somebody mentioned, Akifa mentioned white noise. That's a thing. Google it up. You put on headphones and there's this sound it makes that kind of cuts off outside noise. Number 7, that is 7, actively participate in the learning. Now, what does this mean? It means that you are not just absorbing information, but you are also playing a role in practicing on what you've learned. Now, for IT Varsity students, you might be wondering what this means because it's built into the learning. I mean, you cannot learn the entrepreneur course without actually creating. So you can see there's a method to why we have that system where you watch the videos and you practice what you learn, and by the end of the module you submit your work, you submit what you've learned. Now with most e-learning courses, it's just a matter of watching. You just look and look and look and look and look, and there's no submission at the end. It's up to you whether you want to make it or you don't want to make the project. It's entirely up to you. And I find this very counterintuitive when it comes to learning. There should be at least some kind of engagement. There should be encouragement for you to engage. Because take a subject like coding. You can watch hundreds of hours of coding videos, but until you don't get down to coding, you will never actually learn coding. So actively participate in the learning. You learn something new, go and practice. So that's one level of participation. The other level of participation, guys, is to take part in forums, to take part in chat groups. IT Varsity students, I'm talking to you again. We have forums, we have the Slack chat group. Communicate to others. If you see somebody that's having a problem, go and volunteer to help them. Remember, to be a good coder, you code. To be an excellent coder, you read other people's code and you help them to debug their code. That's how you become an excellent coder. So just as with coding, with every other field, go and give advice to people. You learn something new, share what you've learned. Share it on Slack, share it on social media, share it at the dinner table with your family. Guys, today I learned how to do animations in CSS. How cool is that? Or today I learned to make a calculator app with JavaScript. How cool is that? So seek every opportunity to share your knowledge and to help others. Trust me, it will help you more than anyone else. And finally, number 8, leverage your network. Now, in the old days when we used to study, I did some correspondence modules with UNISA. There was a place where you would go, or you would have to contact the tutor and say to the tutor, I'm based in Durban, I'm looking for study partners. And they would recommend some study partners in your area. It was really difficult. It was time consuming. And then we had to schedule times when we met at a library or a school. But today it's gone so much easier, particularly for you IT Varsity students. You can pretty much go on Slack, and that's your network. Or go on, if you want to go out of the IT Varsity network, go on LinkedIn, go on Instagram and say, hey, I'm studying JavaScript. Is there anyone out there in the world who is also studying JavaScript, so I can work with you? So we can have different perspectives. They might be studying somewhere else. You are studying at IT Varsity, and you get together and you talk digitally. How cool is that? So leverage your network, get to know people and work with others to enhance your own learning. So guys, I went quite a bit over time today because I needed to give you guys these tips, 8 tips for making the most of online learning. With those few words, I'm going to stop and I'm going to see if you have any comments or questions for me. Akifa, back to you. Any questions?
Hi, that was awesome. Thank you so much for this webinar today, especially around learning. We have some comments from Lucy saying every little thing we learn is important. Definitely agree with that. So no questions coming through as yet. I definitely see that, learning as something, even when you are the one that's teaching, there's a potential learning attribute that comes into it. Like especially technology, we see people creating courses with VR, and I feel like this field in its space is just like you said, it can be overwhelming because there's so much out there. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I haven't gotten any questions coming through yet.
So we were very thorough today.
Everyone is sorry.
I said we were very thorough today.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. So yeah, but obviously we're always answering questions as it comes out through the week from the snippets. But yeah, awesome webinar. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I got a couple of minutes, so I just want to conclude by saying that to IT Varsity students, the way that we designed the entrepreneur course, all of these elements you'll notice are built into the course. This course was designed with a lot of love and care, and not from the perspective of the teacher, but from the perspective of you, the student. So we had to get into your shoes, and we had to see from the perspective of a student, what is the best thing that you will need to enhance your learning, to enhance the overall experience for you. And we worked backwards from there, and we designed the entrepreneur course. So I think we're always improving. And if you have any suggestions for us, we're always happy to listen to the suggestions, and we get some valuable, extremely valuable suggestions from you guys. And what's great is we didn't look at the writings of some university professors or some master's degrees or PhDs to tell us how to design Entrepreneur. We looked at you, the students, to tell us how to design Entrepreneur. And that's why it's undergone so many different iterations, right? Some of our students are Entrepreneur 2019 students, meaning you did the version that was out in 2019. And then the rest of you are Entrepreneur 2020 students. You are doing a version of it that was very different from what your counterparts in 2019 did, because the course went through a major revision based on the experiences and on the feedback of the 2019 students. And now shortly we're going to release Entrepreneur 2021, which is not such a major shift. It's more content updates, but it's a change. And every year, at least twice a year, we keep the course up to date. So keep the comments and questions coming in. You can contact me directly on Slack, or you can talk to me via your success mentor. Give them your suggestions. They'll escalate to us, and we'll make the changes. Awesome, guys. With those few words, I want to thank you once again for taking the time to listen to this webinar. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you more than anything you are inspired to become a lifelong learner, to go immediately after this. For those of you that are doing Entrepreneur, you stick to that. I mean, don't go and divert your attention. But those of you who are not doing Entrepreneur, pick up a book and start reading. Even if you read half a page, it might be difficult, but it's a start. Or just go and learn something new on YouTube. Pick a random topic, how to make sourdough bread, for example. I just picked that off the top of my head. All knowledge is useful. And as much as you are focused on becoming coders, learn also to broaden your knowledge, broaden your understanding of the world. And one of my favorite topics is to learn about different cultures around the world. I think there's so much of intolerance in this world right now. There's so much of racism. There's so much of conflict and friction. If only people took the time to learn other people's cultures, they would get such a good appreciation for other human beings. Once again, I conclude, and I thank you so much for attending. Bye-bye.